When I asked if I could say a few words at my grandson's birthday, my daughter-in-law whispered, "You're so boring. Your husband probably died just to escape you." I threw my glass in her face. My son snapped, "Apologize or you're out." I laughed. "Let me tell everyone the real reason she married you. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button." The silence in David's backyard was deafening. 8-year-old Tommy's birthday party had been going perfectly until that moment. Ashley stood there dripping with what used to be my iced tea, her perfectly applied makeup now streaking down her cheeks like war paint. The other parents and children stared at us in shock. I'm Margaret Williams, 67 years old, widow for 2 years, and apparently the family embarrassment according to my daughter-in-law. But what Ashley didn't know was that I'd been planning this moment for 6 months. "Mom!" David rushed over with a napkin, fussing over his precious wife. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "Language, David," I said calmly, smoothing down my floral blouse. "There are children present." Ashley's voice turned shrill. "She attacked me, in front of everyone. She's completely lost it. The funny thing about being 67 is that people expect you to be fragile." Confused, easy to dismiss. Ashley had been counting on that for 3 years. What she hadn't counted on was that I used to run the accounting department at Morrison Financial for 35 years. I knew how to spot a fraud from a mile away. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet party. "Ashley seems to think I'm some doddering old fool who doesn't pay attention." David grabbed my arm. "Mom, you need to apologize right now, or you're leaving." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised alone after his father's heart attack when David was 12. This boy who used to bring me dandelions and call me his best friend. Now, he was choosing a woman who'd whispered that his father died to escape me. "Actually, David, I think it's time everyone knew the truth about your wife." Ashley went pale beneath her smeared foundation. "What truth? There's nothing to tell." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. "Should I start with the inheritance investigation you ordered on me last month? Or would you prefer I begin with the reason you really chose David?" The crowd leaned in closer. Even the children had stopped playing, sensing something important was happening. Tommy looked confused, clutching his new baseball glove. "Grandma Maggie, what's happening?" he asked. I knelt down to his level. "Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart. Why don't you go show your friends that new treehouse?" As Tommy ran off, I stood back up and faced the adults. "You see, I've been doing some research these past few months. Amazing what you can discover when you actually look." Ashley's hands were shaking now. "David, she's clearly having some kind of episode. We should call her doctor." "My doctor?" I laughed. "Honey, the only person who needs medical attention is you, specifically a psychiatrist who can explain why you target men with elderly parents." David's face went from angry to confused. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "I'm talking about the fact that your wife never loved you, son. She studied you. She researched our family, our finances, our vulnerabilities. She knew exactly what she was doing when she bumped into you at that coffee shop 3 years ago. The temperature in the yard seemed to drop 20 degrees. Ashley's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "That's not true," David said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Oh, but it is." I smiled sweetly at Ashley. "Should I tell them about the private investigator's report, dear? Or would you like to explain yourself?" That's when I realized I had them exactly where I wanted them. The birthday party guests scattered like leaves in a windstorm after my little announcement. Ashley locked herself in the bathroom. David paced the kitchen like a caged animal, and I sat on the back porch swing, feeling more alive than I had in years. "Mom, you can't just make accusations like that," David said for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. I sipped my fresh glass of iced tea and watched Tommy kick his soccer ball against the fence. That boy deserved to grow up in a household built on truth, not lies and manipulation. "Accusations?" I raised an eyebrow. "Son, I haven't made any accusations yet. I simply suggested that Ashley might have some explaining to do." David ran his hands through his hair, the same nervous gesture he'd had since childhood. "What private investigator? What report? You're not making any sense." Poor David. He really had no idea. Ashley had played him perfectly, and I'd watched it happen from the sidelines for 3 years, biting my tongue until it nearly bled. "David, sit down." I patted the space beside me on the swing. Let me ask you something. When Ashley first met you, what did she say she did for work? He looked confused by the question. She was between jobs, looking for something in marketing. And before that? She'd been caring for her elderly aunt in Florida. The aunt died and left her a small inheritance. I nodded slowly. Such a touching story. So believable. So complete nonsense. David, honey, there was no aunt in Florida. There was no inheritance. There was no marketing background. His face went white. How do you know that? I pulled my phone out again and scrolled to a particular email. Because I hired a real private investigator to look into your wife's background after some things started bothering me. What things? The bathroom door slammed upstairs, and we could hear Ashley talking in urgent, hushed tones on the phone. Interesting. Who would she be calling right now? Well, for starters, she knew an awful lot about our family finances for someone you'd supposedly just met. Remember your first dinner at my house? She mentioned that Dad's life insurance had been substantial. How would she know that? David frowned. She said you'd mentioned it to her. I never told her anything about your father's insurance. David. In fact, I've never discussed money with Ashley at all. She just somehow knew. I could see the wheels turning in his head. David wasn't stupid, just trusting. He'd inherited that from his father. God rest his soul. There were other things, too. She knew which bank I used. She knew about the trust fund your father set up for Tommy. She even knew about the life insurance policy I have on myself. Maybe I told her those things. Did you? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't think so. I mean, maybe in passing. David, I need you to really think about this. In your 3 years of marriage, has Ashley ever pushed you to move me into a retirement home? His silence was answer enough. Has she suggested that maybe it's time for me to update my will? Make sure everything is in order? She's just concerned about your future, Mom. Whose future exactly? Ashley appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face freshly washed, but her eyes red-rimmed. She'd changed into a different dress, probably because the first one still smelled like iced tea. David, we need to talk privately, she said, not looking at me. Actually, I stood up from the swing. I think the three of us need to talk together, unless you'd prefer to have this conversation in front of the whole neighborhood tomorrow. Ashley's jaw tightened. I don't know what game you're playing, Margaret, but it ends now. Game? I smiled. Oh, sweetheart, the game is just getting started, and you're going to love how it ends. 6 months ago, I thought Ashley was just young and a little self-centered. I made excuses for her, the way mothers do when they want their children to be happy. Then she made a mistake that opened my eyes to everything. It was a Wednesday morning in January. I'd come over to babysit Tommy while David went to a client meeting. Ashley was supposed to be at her yoga class, but I found her in David's home office, going through his filing cabinet. Oh! She jumped when she saw me. Margaret, I didn't hear you come in. I stood in the doorway, car keys still in my hand. What are you looking for, dear? Just some tax documents. David asked me to find the property tax records for our accountant. It sounded reasonable, except for one small problem. Ashley, you do realize that property taxes are handled by the mortgage company, don't you? They're part of your escrow payment. For just a second, her mask slipped. I saw something cold and calculating flash across her features before the sweet smile returned. Of course. Silly me. I must have misunderstood what he needed. She closed the filing cabinet and breezed past me. I should get to yoga. Traffic is going to be terrible. After she left, I went into David's office. The filing cabinet was unlocked, which was unusual. David was meticulous about his important papers. I opened the drawer Ashley had been searching through. Insurance policies, investment accounts, my will, the trust documents for Tommy's college fund. Everything financial was in that drawer, and it had clearly been rifled through. That afternoon, I called my lawyer. Margaret, good to hear from you. Frank Peterson had been handling our family's legal affairs for 20 years. What can I do for you? Frank, I need you to tell me something confidentially. Has anyone contacted your office asking about my will or any of my legal documents? There was a pause. That's an odd question, Margaret. Why do you ask? Just answer me, please. No one has contacted me directly. However, I did receive a call about 2 weeks ago from someone claiming to be your daughter-in-law. She said you were considering updating your estate planning and wanted to know what documents we had on file. My blood ran cold. What did you tell her? I told her I couldn't discuss any client information without your written authorization. She became quite insistent, said it was urgent for family planning purposes. Did she give her name? She said she was Mrs. Ashley Williams, your son, David's wife. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen for an hour, staring at the wall. Ashley had tried to access my legal documents by impersonating me to my lawyer. This wasn't curiosity or even gold digging. This was systematic information gathering. The next day, I called Rebecca Morrison. She'd been my friend for 40 years and still worked at the bank where I'd had my accounts for decades. Rebecca, I need a favor, and I need you to keep it between us. Of course, Maggie. What's wrong? I need to know if anyone has been making inquiries about my accounts, maybe claiming to be family, asking about balances or beneficiary information. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Actually, yes. About a month ago, a young woman came in saying she was your daughter-in-law. She had a story about helping you organize your finances because you were getting forgetful. What did you tell her? Nothing. Of course. But Maggie, she knew things. She knew which accounts you had, approximate balances, even mentioned your safe deposit box. After I hung up with Rebecca, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. The filing cabinet, the lawyer, the bank. What else had Ashley been investigating? That evening, I drove to the library and spent 3 hours learning how to hire a private investigator online. By the time I left, I had an appointment with Sandra Hayes Investigations for the following Monday. Sandra's office was small but professional. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Mrs. Williams, tell me what you want to know. I explained everything. Ashley's behavior, the financial inquiries, the feeling that something was wrong. I want to know who she really is, I said. I want to know what she was doing before she met my son. And I want to know if she's done this before. Sandra nodded. It'll take a few weeks, maybe a month. I'll need some basic information about her to start. I gave her Ashley's maiden name, her supposed hometown, and her claimed work history. Mrs. Williams, can I ask why you're doing this? If you suspect your daughter-in-law is after money, why not just change your will or move your assets? I thought about Tommy, about David, about the life they'd built together. Because if I'm right about what she is, my son needs to know. And if I'm wrong, then I owe them both an apology. 3 weeks later, Sandra called me back to her office. Mrs. Williams, you're not going to like what I found. Sandra Hayes spread 5 manila folders across her desk like she was dealing poker cards. Each folder was thick with documents, photographs, and printed emails. My stomach churned looking at them. Mrs. Williams, your daughter-in-law isn't who she says she is. I'd expected this, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. Tell me everything. Sandra opened the first folder. Ashley Collins isn't even her real name. She was born Ashley Morrison in Ohio. She's 32, not 28 like she told your son. She handed me a birth certificate copy. She's been married twice before, both times to men with substantial family wealth or elderly parents. My hands shook as I took the documents. What happened to the other husbands? Husband number 1 was Marcus Henderson, a lawyer in Cincinnati. His mother died 6 months after Ashley married into the family. Left everything to Marcus, who then transferred significant assets to Ashley before their divorce 2 years later. Sandra opened the second folder. Husband number 2 was Robert Chen, a tech executive in Seattle. His father died in what was ruled an accident just 8 months after Ashley joined the family. Robert inherited the father's business and immediately put Ashley on the board of directors. They divorced 18 months later with Ashley walking away with half his assets. I felt sick. Are you saying she killed these people? I'm saying the timing is suspicious, but there's no evidence of foul play. What I can prove is a pattern of behavior. She pulled out a timeline chart that looked like something from a police investigation. Ashley spent approximately 6 months researching each family before making contact with the target husband. She studies their habits, their finances, their family dynamics. Then she orchestrates the first meeting. How does she research them? Sandra opened the third folder. Social media, public records, even hiring private investigators of her own? Look at this. She showed me a credit report with Ashley's name on it. Under employment history was listed Hayes Family Research Services for a 6-month period right before she'd met David. She worked for a private investigation firm that specializes in asset research. She had access to databases and resources that most people never even know exist. The room started spinning. So she knew everything about our family before she ever met David. Everything. Your husband's obituary listed his accomplishments and charitable giving, which gave her insight into your family's wealth level. David's social media showed his regular coffee shop visits, his gym membership, his work schedule. She knew exactly when and where to accidentally bump into him. Sandra handed me a photo from the fourth folder. It showed Ashley sitting in the same coffee shop where she'd supposedly first met David, but the date stamp was 2 weeks before their first official encounter. She was surveilling him, learning his routines. What about the story about caring for an aunt in Florida? Complete fiction. During the time she claimed to be in Florida, she was actually living in Portland under a different name while her divorce from Robert Chen was being finalized. I stared at the evidence spread across the desk. 3 years of marriage to a professional con artist. 3 years of watching her manipulate my son while planning God knew what. Sandra, what does she want from us specifically? The other husbands were wealthy in their own right. David makes good money, but we're not millionaires. Sandra opened the fifth and final folder. That's where you're wrong, Mrs. Williams. She showed me a property assessment report. Your house is worth $800,000 in today's market. Your investment portfolio is worth approximately $1.2 million. The life insurance policy your husband left you is worth $500,000. Add in your savings and other assets, and you're worth close to $3 million. I nearly fell out of my chair. That can't be right. Your husband was very smart about investments, Mrs. Williams, and the property values in your neighborhood have tripled in the past decade. From Ashley's perspective, you represent a significant payday. But I'm healthy. I'm not planning to die anytime soon. Sandra's expression turned serious. Mrs. Williams, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Has Ashley been encouraging you to do anything that might be risky to your health? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Has she suggested new doctors? New medications? Changes to your routine or diet? Activities that might be dangerous for someone your age? I thought back over the past few months. Ashley had been pushing me to try rock climbing with her. She'd recommended a new doctor after claiming my current physician was old-fashioned. She'd even suggested I try some new herbal supplements she'd ordered online. Oh my God, I whispered. Mrs. Williams, I think your daughter-in-law is planning something. And based on her history, I think you need to be very careful. I gathered up all the folders with shaking hands. Sandra, I need copies of everything. Already made them. Mrs. Williams, what are you going to do with this information? I stood up, feeling older than my 67 years, but also more determined than I'd felt in decades. I'm going to protect my family, even if it means destroying hers. The hardest part about discovering your daughter-in-law is a professional marriage scammer isn't the betrayal or even the danger. It's the waiting. For 2 months after Sandra gave me Ashley's real history, I had to sit across from her at Sunday dinners and pretend I didn't know she was planning to either rob me blind or worse. But I wasn't just waiting. I was preparing. I moved my most important assets to new accounts at a different bank. I updated my will with a completely new law firm. I even bought a small safe deposit box across town and stored copies of all Sandra's evidence there. Most importantly, I started documenting everything Ashley did. The herbal supplements she kept pushing on me, I had them tested by an independent lab. Turns out, they contained compounds that could cause irregular heartbeat and dizziness in elderly patients. The new doctor she'd recommended? I discovered he'd had his license suspended in 2 other states for insurance fraud. Every helpful suggestion Ashley made was designed to either give her access to my finances or put me at risk. Then came the phone call that changed everything. I was in my kitchen on a Thursday morning in March when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Williams, this is Detective James Morton from the Seattle Police Department. My heart stopped. How can I help you, Detective? Ma'am, I understand you've been inquiring about a woman named Ashley Morrison, formerly Ashley Chen. I sank into a kitchen chair. Yes, I have. Mrs. Williams, I'm calling because we've reopened the investigation into Robert Chen's death. The world tilted sideways. I thought his death was ruled an accident. It was, but some new evidence has come to light. We've discovered that Mr. Chen's death wasn't the first suspicious incident connected to Mrs. Morrison. Detective Morton explained that they'd been contacted by authorities in Cincinnati about Marcus Henderson's mother's death. What had originally been attributed to natural causes was now being investigated as potential poisoning. Mrs. Williams, are you currently living with Mrs. Morrison or in close contact with her? She's married to my son. We have family dinners every week. Ma'am, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Based on what we've uncovered, we believe Mrs. Morrison may be responsible for at least 2 deaths and possibly planning a third. You could be in serious danger. I told Detective Morton about the supplements, the doctor, and all of Ashley's suspicious behavior. He listened grimly. Mrs. Williams, we're going to need you to be very careful about what you eat or drink around her. Don't take any medication she gives you, and whatever you do, don't let her know that you suspect anything. Detective, how long before you can arrest her? We need more evidence. What we have is circumstantial. We need either a confession or solid proof that she's planning to harm you. After I hung up with Detective Morton, I sat in my kitchen for an hour, staring at the phone. Ashley wasn't just a gold digger or a con artist. She was a killer. That evening, David and Ashley came for our usual Thursday dinner. I served pot roast and tried to act normal while watching my daughter-in-law smile and laugh and help herself to seconds. Margaret, you outdid yourself tonight, Ashley said, clearing plates. The meat was so tender. What's your secret? I wanted to tell her my secret was that I hadn't poisoned it. Just patience, dear. Good things take time. Ashley insisted on doing the dishes, which gave me a few minutes alone with David in the living room. Son, can I ask you something? Sure, Mom. Has Ashley ever mentioned her previous relationships to you? David looked uncomfortable. Not really. She said she'd rather focus on our future than dwell on the past. What about her family? Her friends from before she met you? Mom, why all the questions about Ashley's past? Because your wife is a serial killer, I thought. Out loud, I said, I just realized I don't know much about the woman who married my son. Ashley's voice called from the kitchen. David, honey, can you help me with something? As David went to help his wife, I noticed Ashley had left her purse on the coffee table. For just a moment, I considered looking through it. Then I remembered Detective Morton's warning about not letting her know I suspected anything. When they got ready to leave, Ashley hugged me goodbye like she always did. See you Sunday. Margaret, I'm making my famous apple pie. Famous apple pie. I wondered if Marcus Henderson's mother had enjoyed Ashley's baking, or if Robert Chen's father had complimented her cooking. After they left, I called Detective Morton. Detective, she's planning something for Sunday. I can feel it. Mrs. Williams, do you think you can get her to incriminate herself somehow? Maybe record a conversation where she reveals her intentions? I thought about Tommy, about David, about the life they thought they were building with a woman who had killed at least 2 people. Detective, what if I told you I had a better idea? Ashley knew something was wrong. I could see it in the way she watched me during Tommy's soccer practice on Saturday, the way she kept checking her phone, the way she touched David's arm just a little too often for reassurance. The birthday party confrontation had rattled her, and Detective Morton's investigation was apparently heating up because she'd started making mistakes. Margaret, she said, sliding onto the bleacher next to me while David talked to Tommy's coach. I think we need to clear the air about yesterday. I kept my eyes on Tommy as he practiced his kicks. What's to clear up, dear? You seemed upset about something, and I just want you to know that if I said anything that hurt your feelings, it wasn't intentional. The fake sincerity in her voice made my skin crawl. Ashley, you told me that my husband probably died to escape me. I'm curious what part of that wasn't intentional. She had the grace to look embarrassed. I was just frustrated. Planning Tommy's party has been stressful, and sometimes I say things I don't mean when I'm overwhelmed. I finally turned to look at her. And the private investigator you hired to look into my finances? Was that also just stress? Her face went white, then red, then white again. I don't know what you're talking about. Ashley, dear, I may be 67, but I'm not senile. I know you've been researching my assets. I know you tried to get information from my lawyer and my bank. The question is, why? She stood up abruptly. I think you're confused, Margaret. Maybe the stress of Harold's death is still affecting you more than you realize. Is that your professional opinion? Dr. Ashley? Oh wait, you're not a doctor. You're not even who you say you are. The color drained from her face completely. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but it stops now. The same game you played with Marcus Henderson and Robert Chen? Ashley looked like I'd slapped her. For a moment, her carefully maintained mask slipped entirely, and I saw something cold and dangerous in her eyes. You have no idea what you're talking about, she whispered. Don't I? Should I call Detective Morton right now and let you explain it to him? Ashley's hands were shaking now. You called the police? Sweetheart, the police called me. Apparently, they've been very interested in talking to you about some suspicious deaths in your past. She glanced around the soccer field, probably calculating whether she could run. David was still talking to the coach, and Tommy was happily oblivious to the drama unfolding in the bleachers. Margaret, I think you've misunderstood some things. Have I? Let me see if I have this right. You spent months researching David and our family before orchestrating your first meeting with him. You've been systematically trying to access information about my finances and legal documents. You've been pushing dangerous supplements and questionable medical advice on me. And you have a history of marrying men whose elderly relatives die shortly after you join the family. Ashley sat back down, probably because her legs wouldn't support her anymore. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want you to leave my family alone. And if I don't? I smiled sweetly. Then tomorrow at Sunday dinner. When you serve your famous apple pie, I'll have Detective Morton waiting in the kitchen to arrest you. Ashley's breathing became rapid and shallow. You can't prove anything. Can't I? Ashley Morrison from Ohio, age 32, twice divorced. Both husbands lost elderly relatives under suspicious circumstances shortly after you married into their families. Should I continue? That's all circumstantial. Maybe, but it's enough to get you arrested while they investigate, and once they start digging deeper into your background, how long do you think it'll be before they find proof? David started walking back toward us, and Ashley quickly composed herself. What exactly are you proposing? She whispered. Leave, tonight, file for divorce and disappear. Move to another state and find some other family to victimize. And if I do that, you'll keep your mouth shut? I looked at Tommy, who was waving at us from the field. If you leave quietly, I'll give you 24 hours before I call Detective Morton with your new location. That's not enough time to what? Ashley? To plan my death? To figure out how to get access to my assets before you run? 24 hours is generous. David reached the bleachers. What are you two talking about so seriously? Ashley managed a bright smile. Just discussing tomorrow's dinner. I was thinking of making something special. Actually, I said, standing up, I think Ashley might be too tired for cooking tomorrow. All this party planning has worn her out. Ashley's smile faltered. Oh no, I insist. I'd hate to disappoint everyone. Well, I said, gathering my purse, I guess we'll see what tomorrow brings. As we walked to our cars, Ashley caught my arm. Margaret, you're making a big mistake. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then met her eyes. The only mistake I made was not figuring out what you were sooner. But don't worry, dear. I won't make that mistake again. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I'd spent the night wondering if Ashley would take my advice and disappear, or if she'd show up at dinner with something more permanent in mind for dealing with her mother-in-law problem. At 9 a.m., David called. Mom, Ashley's not feeling well. She might have food poisoning from that seafood place we went to last night. We might need to cancel dinner. Food poisoning. How convenient. That's terrible, son. Is she seeing a doctor? She says it's just a 24-hour bug. She should be fine by tomorrow. So Ashley was buying herself time, either to plan her next move or to disappear. I decided to force her hand. David, why don't you and Tommy come for dinner anyway? I'll make something simple, and you can take a plate home to Ashley. I don't want to leave her alone when she's sick. Nonsense. Tommy shouldn't miss Sunday dinner because Ashley has an upset stomach. Besides, I have something important to discuss with you. There was a pause. What kind of something? The kind that's better said in person. Can you be here by 5? After David agreed, I made my next call. Detective Morton? It's Margaret Williams. I think tonight might be the night. Mrs. Williams, are you sure you want to go through with this? It could be dangerous. I'd spent the morning thinking about that. Ashley was cornered now. She knew I had evidence against her, knew the police were investigating her past. A cornered animal was always the most dangerous. Detective, she's not going to just disappear. Women like Ashley don't give up million-dollar paydays without a fight. What do you have in mind? I explained my plan. Detective Morton thought I was crazy, but he agreed to have officers stationed outside my house. At 4:30, I started cooking. Simple comfort food, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. Nothing that could be easily tampered with if Ashley decided to make an appearance. David and Tommy arrived right on time. Tommy hugged me and ran straight to the living room to watch cartoons. David looked exhausted. "How's Ashley feeling?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Actually, much better. She might come by later to pick us up." "Of course she would." "David, sit down. We need to talk." I'd rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, but actually looking at my son made everything harder. How do you tell someone their wife is a murderer? "Son, what do you know about Ashley's life before she met you?" David frowned. "Mom, not this again. Why are you so obsessed with Ashley's past?" "Because her past is about to become your future." I pulled out one of Sandra's folders and set it on the kitchen table. "David, your wife isn't who she says she is." For the next 20 minutes, I showed him everything. The real birth certificate, the previous marriages, the suspicious deaths, the pattern of behavior. David's face went from confused to angry to horrified. "This can't be real," he whispered, staring at the photo of Ashley surveilling him at the coffee shop. "It's real, son. And there's more." I told him about Detective Morton, about the reopened investigations, about the supplements Ashley had been pushing on me. "She's been trying to kill you?" David's voice cracked. "Or at least make me sick enough to need the kind of medical care that might speed up my natural timeline." David buried his face in his hands. 3 years. 3 years of marriage to a stranger. "David, there's something else you need to know. I confronted her yesterday." His head snapped up. "You what?" "I told her I knew who she really was. I gave her a choice, leave town or face the police." "Mom, that was incredibly dangerous, which is why Detective Morton has officers outside watching the house." As if summoned by her name, Ashley's car pulled into the driveway. David and I looked at each other across the kitchen table. "What do we do?" he asked. "We act normal. Let her think she's still in control. The police are recording everything, so whatever she says or does, it's evidence." Ashley knocked on the front door, which was odd since she usually just walked in. David went to answer it while I stayed in the kitchen, my heart pounding. "Surprise!" I heard Ashley's voice, artificially bright. "I'm feeling so much better. I brought dessert." She appeared in the kitchen doorway carrying a covered pie dish and wearing the same sweet smile that had fooled us all for 3 years. "Margaret, you look wonderful. I'm so sorry about yesterday's misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding was that, dear?" Ashley set the pie on the counter. "All that silly talk about investigators and police. I realized you must have me confused with someone else." She started cutting the pie with efficient, practiced movements. The same movements she'd probably used while preparing her last meal for Marcus Henderson's mother. "Actually, Ashley, I don't think I was confused at all." The knife stopped moving. "Margaret, I really think we should put all this unpleasantness behind us." "I agree. David and I were just discussing how nice it would be to clear the air." Ashley looked between us, and I saw the moment she realized David knew everything. Her mask didn't slip this time. It shattered completely. "How much did you tell him?" she asked quietly. "Everything." Ashley looked at the pie, then at us, then at Tommy playing in the living room. When she looked back at us, there was something desperate and dangerous in her eyes. "You have no idea what you've done," she said. That's when I noticed she was still holding the knife. The kitchen became a minefield of silence, broken only by the sound of Tommy's cartoons from the living room and the steady tick of my wall clock. Ashley held the pie knife like she was considering her options. "Ashley, put the knife down." David's voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking. "You know what's funny?" Ashley said, ignoring him completely. "I actually grew fond of you people. It would have been so much easier if you'd just played along." "Played along with what?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "With you murdering me?" Ashley laughed, and the sound raised every hair on my arms. "Murder? Oh, Margaret, you watch too much television. I don't murder anyone." "Then what happened to Marcus Henderson's mother and Robert Chen's father?" "They died, like old people do." She stepped closer to the table. "Sometimes they just need a little help accepting that their time is up." David stood up slowly. "Ashley, whatever you're thinking, Tommy is in the next room." "Sweet Tommy." Ashley's expression softened for a moment. You know, he was never part of the plan. I'm not a monster, David. I don't hurt children. But you do hurt elderly parents, I said. I help families transition through difficult times. Do you have any idea how much suffering I've prevented? How much prolonged decline in medical bills and emotional agony? The woman was completely insane. She'd convinced herself she was performing some kind of public service. And the money you inherit is just a happy coincidence? I asked. The money is compensation for services rendered. Do you know how difficult it is to care for elderly people, Margaret? How exhausting it is to pretend to love someone while you watch them deteriorate? Is that what you've been doing with me? Pretending to love me while waiting for me to deteriorate? Ashley tilted her head like she was considering the question. You were supposed to deteriorate faster. The supplements should have caused enough cardiac episodes to weaken you significantly. But you're surprisingly robust for 67. I felt sick hearing her talk about my death so casually. The new doctor you recommended, Dr. Patterson, what was his role in all this? Dr. Patterson is very understanding about elderly patients who experience sudden declines in health. He's also terrible at paperwork, which makes him ideal for situations that require flexibility in documentation. David moved slightly toward Ashley. So what now? What's your plan here? Honestly, I'm improvising. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Ashley gestured with the knife as she spoke. Margaret was supposed to have a heart episode 3 months ago. You were supposed to inherit everything and then gratefully share it with your devoted wife who'd sacrificed so much to care for your difficult mother. But I didn't cooperate by dying on schedule. No, you didn't. And then you had to go poking around in things that weren't your business. I heard a car door slam outside. Through the kitchen window, I could see Detective Morton getting out of an unmarked car. Ashley noticed my glance toward the window and spun around. When she saw the detective approaching the house, her face went white. You called the police. I told you I would. Ashley looked at the knife in her hand, then at David, then at me. For a moment, I thought she might actually try to use it. Instead, she set it down on the counter and smoothed her hair. Well then, I suppose it's time for the final act. The front door opened, and Detective Morton called out, Mrs. Williams, I'm coming in. We're in the kitchen, Detective, I replied. When Detective Morton entered the kitchen, Ashley was sitting calmly at the table with her hands folded. She looked like she was waiting for tea service. Mrs. Morrison, Detective Morton nodded to Ashley. We've been wanting to talk to you. I'm sure you have. Am I under arrest? That depends on whether you'd like to answer some questions voluntarily or if we need to do this downtown. Ashley looked around the kitchen, at the pie she'd brought, at David's horrified face, at me sitting across from her. Detective, can I ask you something? Sure. If someone were hypothetically relieving elderly people of the burden of prolonged suffering, and if families were hypothetically benefiting financially from that relief, would that hypothetically be considered a crime? Detective Morton stared at her, Ma'am, are you confessing to something? I'm speaking hypothetically. Hypothetically, if someone were poisoning elderly people for inheritance money, that would be first-degree murder. Ashley nodded thoughtfully. I see. And if that same person were planning to do the same thing to someone else, but hadn't actually done it yet? Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, possibly several other charges. Fascinating. Ashley stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the other police cars that had arrived. You know, Detective, I've always been curious about something. What's that? How long does it take for someone to die from digitalis poisoning? The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Ma'am, are you saying you've given someone digitalis? Ashley turned back to us with that sweet smile. Not yet, but Margaret's famous apple pie is cooling on the counter, and I do so hate to see good food go to waste. That's when I realized Ashley hadn't been planning to stab anyone with the knife. She'd been planning to serve us poisoned pie for dessert. Detective Morton moved toward Ashley, but she held up her hand. I wouldn't, Detective. You see, that pie contains enough digitalis to kill 3 people, and my stepson is in the living room with very sticky fingers. If he touches the wrong surface and then puts his hand in his mouth, my blood turned to ice. You wouldn't hurt Tommy. I told you, Margaret, I don't hurt children. But accidents happen when people make poor choices. Detective Morton spoke into his radio. I need the hazmat team here immediately, and keep everyone out of the house until we can secure the scene. Ashley, David's voice was strangled. Please, Tommy is innocent in all this. Everyone is innocent, David. That's what makes this all so tragic. She moved toward the living room, and Detective Morton drew his weapon. Ma'am, stop right there. Or what? You'll shoot me? In front of a child? While a toxic substance sits on the kitchen counter? The front door opened again, and I heard more officers entering the house. Detective Morton, one of them called. We've got the perimeter secured. Tell them not to touch anything in the kitchen, Detective Morton called back, and get that child out of the living room. Ashley laughed. Too late for that, I'm afraid. We all rushed to the living room doorway. Tommy was sitting on the couch, exactly where he'd been before, completely absorbed in his cartoons. His hands were clean, and he didn't appear to have touched anything dangerous. Tommy, I called softly. Sweetheart, can you come to Grandma Maggie? Just a minute, Grandma. This is the good part. Ashley smiled. Children never listen when you really need them to. Ashley, Detective Morton said carefully, let's work this out. No one has been hurt yet. No one except Marcus Henderson's mother, Robert Chen's father, and probably 6 or 7 others over the years that you don't know about yet. The casual admission sent chills down my spine. 6 or 7 others? Detective Morton asked. Did you think David was only my 3rd husband? Oh, Detective, you have no idea how long I've been perfecting my craft. Why don't you tell me about it? Ashley looked thoughtful. You know what? I think I will. After all, what's the point of being brilliant if no one appreciates your work? She settled into the armchair across from Tommy, who was still oblivious to the drama unfolding around him. It started when I was 22, Ashley began, her voice taking on an almost dreamy quality. I was working as a home health aide for an elderly man named George Whitman. Sweet old man, very wealthy, very lonely. His family never visited. What happened to Mr. Whitman? Detective Morton asked, slowly moving closer. Heart failure, very sudden, very peaceful. And George had become quite fond of me over the months I'd been caring for him. He changed his will to leave me a small inheritance. How small? $200,000. Enough to change my life. I felt sick listening to her talk about murder like it was a career achievement. That's when I realized I had a gift, Ashley continued. I understood what elderly people needed. Peace. Release from the burden of aging. And I was very good at providing that. So you made it your business. I made it my calling. Do you have any idea how many families I've helped? How much suffering I've prevented? Tommy finally looked up from his cartoons. Dad, why are there police here? David knelt down next to his son. Tommy, I need you to go outside with the nice officers. Grandma Maggie and I will be out in a minute. But my show isn't over. You can watch it on my phone outside. As an officer gently led Tommy out of the house, Ashley's expression turned sad. I'm going to miss that little boy. You're not going anywhere near him ever again, David said fiercely. Oh, David, you still don't understand, do you? Understand what? Ashley reached into her purse and pulled out a small vial of clear liquid. I didn't put the digitalis in the pie, David. I put it in the mashed potatoes you've been eating for the past hour. The room exploded into chaos. David collapsed to his knees, clutching his stomach. Detective Morton lunged for Ashley while screaming for paramedics. I knelt next to my son as his face turned gray. David, stay with me. Ashley's voice came from somewhere behind me, calm and satisfied. Don't worry, Margaret. I calculated the dose very carefully. He'll die slowly enough for you to say goodbye. That's when I lost my mind completely. I launched myself at Ashley, 67 years old or not. I was going to tear her apart with my bare hands. Detective Morton caught me before I could reach her, but not before I'd gotten close enough to spit in her face. You're done, I snarled. You're finished. Ashley wiped her cheek delicately. Actually, Margaret, I think you are. She raised the vial to her lips and drank the contents before anyone could stop her. You see, Detective, dead women tell no tales, and without my testimony, you'll never be able to prove any of this happened. As Ashley collapsed to the floor, Detective Morton was already on his radio, calling for multiple ambulances and demanding that the hospital prepare for 2 possible poisoning victims. I held David's hand as he struggled to breathe, watching the woman who'd nearly destroyed my family convulse on my living room carpet. She's not going to win, I whispered to my son. I won't let her win. 3 weeks later, I sat in David's hospital room watching him try to eat solid food for the first time since Ashley's poisoning attempt. The doctors said he'd make a full recovery, but it would take months of rehabilitation to undo the damage the digitalis had done to his heart. "Mom, you don't have to stay here all day," he said, pushing away the bowl of soup. "Tommy needs you too." "Tommy is fine. He's with Linda today, and they're making cookies." I reached for his hand. "Besides, where else would I be?" David was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. All the times Ashley said or did things that should have warned me. Son, she was a professional. This is what she did for a living. But 3 years, Mom. 3 years of sleeping next to a killer. I understood his guilt, but I also knew it wasn't productive. David, the only person responsible for Ashley's actions, was Ashley. The irony was that Ashley had saved the prosecutors a lot of trouble by poisoning herself that night. She died before the ambulance reached the hospital, taking most of her secrets with her. But Detective Morton had gotten enough from her confession to close several cold cases. "Mrs. Williams?" A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Detective Morton stood in the doorway holding a manila envelope. "Detective, how nice to see you. I wanted to update you both on the investigation." He pulled up a chair. "Ashley Morrison, or whatever her real name was, has been linked to 9 suspicious deaths across 6 states over the past 15 years. David closed his eyes. 9 people. The good news is that her death has closed all those cases. The families finally have answers. Detective Morton handed me the envelope. "These are copies of all the evidence we used in the case. I thought you might want them for your peace of mind." "Thank you, Detective. What about Dr. Patterson?" "He's been arrested. Turns out he'd been providing fraudulent death certificates for several suspicious deaths. Not just Ashley's victims. He's looking at federal charges." After Detective Morton left, David and I sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, I need to ask you something. Anything. How did you know? What made you suspicious of Ashley in the first place?" I'd been dreading this question because the answer was embarrassing. "She complimented my apple pie." David stared at me. "What?" "3 months after your wedding, she told me my apple pie was delicious. But David, I'd never made apple pie for Ashley. I'd never even mentioned that I baked pies." "That's it? That's what started your investigation?" "Son, when someone lies about something that small and meaningless, it makes you wonder what else they're lying about." David shook his head. "A compliment about pie nearly got me killed. No, marrying a serial killer nearly got you killed. The pie just helped me figure it out." A month later, Tommy and I were in my kitchen making actual apple pie when he asked the question I'd been expecting. "Grandma Maggie, why did Ashley try to hurt Dad?" I'd been thinking about this answer for weeks. How do you explain evil to an 8-year-old without terrifying him? "Tommy, sometimes people get sick in their hearts and minds. Ashley was very sick, and when people are that sick, they sometimes hurt others. But she seemed so nice." "She did. And that's why we have to be careful about people, even when they seem nice. What matters is how people treat us over time, not just how they seem at first." Tommy nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Is Dad going to be okay?" "Dad is going to be just fine. The doctors say he'll be home next week." "And you're okay too?" I looked at my grandson. This beautiful boy who'd almost lost his father because a monster had infiltrated our family. "I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." 6 months later, I stood in the courthouse as the judge finalized David's divorce from Ashley Morrison posthumously. It was a strange legal proceeding, divorcing a dead woman, but it was necessary to untangle the financial mess Ashley had created. "Mrs. Williams," David's lawyer approached me after the hearing. "All of your assets have been secured and returned to your control. The house deed has been corrected, and your bank accounts are back in your name only." I nodded, relieved. Ashley had managed to transfer some of my assets to joint accounts before her death, but the courts had reversed everything once her crimes were proven. What about the life insurance policy on David that Ashley took out? Voided. Insurance companies don't pay out when the beneficiary attempts to murder the insured. As we walked out of the courthouse, David put his arm around my shoulders. "So what now, Mom? You could sell the house and travel, see the world. You've got decades of life left." I thought about it. At 67, I did have years ahead of me. I could do anything I wanted. Actually, I think I'll stay put for a while. Maybe take up baking more seriously. I've been thinking about opening a small cafe. That sounds perfect. And David? I think you and Tommy should move back in with me for a while. That house has too many memories of Ashley. David smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him since the poisoning. I think we'd like that, Mom. As we drove home together, I thought about Ashley's final words to me. Dead women tell no tales. She'd been wrong about that. Dead women who leave behind evidence and confessions tell plenty of tales. But living women who fight for their families, we tell the best stories of all. Now I'm curious about you who listen to my story. Have you ever had to protect your family from someone dangerous? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted wasn't who they seemed to be? Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.